I have been asked to reply. My right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, is in Moscow having bilateral discussions with President Gorbachev.
Mr. Speaker, will the Lord President admit that if the Ribble Valley Borough Council had been given £1,192 per taxpayer, poll taxpayer, that was received in Wandsworth, received in Wandsworth, order. I will start again. Carry on. If Ribble Valley Borough Council had been given the same money, £1,192 per poll taxpayer, to Ribble Valley, it would have meant that Ribble Valley constituents would have saved £225. Will you admit it?
In the first place, Ribble Valley is a district council and so can't be compared with the borough that the honourable gentleman has in mind. But Ribble Valley got much less than the adjoining Preston Borough Council, and Ribble Valley's charge to the community charge payer is 70p per week compared with £1.40 in Preston. What is more, there are many other ways in which Ribble Valley community charge payers will benefit. But if the honourable gentleman is trying to make a comparison with an inner London borough, can I point out to him that the London borough of Wandsworth had external support pounds per adult of £1,192 compared with Lambeth's £1,557. And he will know the phenomenal difference in the community charge between both.
Sir John Stokes.
Mr. Speaker, sir, in view of the large and growing number of hoax bomb calls, does my right honourable friend think that the present maximum penalty of 3 months' imprisonment is sufficient for these very serious and dangerous offences?
I believe that matter is being looked at the moment not only by the government but also by British Telecoms, and I certainly agree with my honourable friend about the importance of dealing with hoax phone calls.
Mr. Roy Hadsley.
Did the statement...
Order.
Did the statement on the poll tax... Did the statement on the poll tax made yesterday in Clitheroe by the Secretary of State for Health represent government policy?
The position in the community charge is very clear. That the community charge, the honourable gentleman talks about Clitheroe. I think I know what he has in mind. He will know that the community charge reduction scheme, which we've recently introduced, will benefit 8 out of 10 households in Ribble Valley next year, and that all of those, the general average of reduction will be around £200, That is a very clear position on the community charge from which everyone in Ribble Valley, or many people in Ribble Valley, will benefit.
Order.
The Lord President has blocked his colleague's statement from his mind. Let me tell him what the Secretary of State for Health said, succinctly and precisely, about the poll tax. He said the government's policy was no regrets, no apology. Does the Lord President endorse that view?
I'm not surprised that the honourable gentleman didn't like my answer on the community charge reduction scheme, because that is clearly going to benefit a great number of people in Ribble Valley. He will also know that we are reviewing all aspects of the community charge scheme, and that's already been made clear so many times.
Since the Lord President has singularly refused twice to answer my question on what his colleague said, might I suggest to him what his colleague really meant, with no apologies, no regrets about the poll tax, and no idea what to do next?
Well, might I suggest to the right honourable gentleman that he doesn't pay so much attention to everything in the newspapers because my right honourable friend my right honourable friend said no such thing.
The table!
Now that it looks as if the community charge in its present form is going to go, would the Cabinet consider abolishing the right of town halls to raise money at all, give them 100% on a formula of what they need to spend? This will save over £1.5 billion in collection costs and will do away with all kinds of things like transitional relief and community charge relief.
Well, my honourable friend has made his view known. He will know that the Cabinet is looking at all options in relation to the community charge review.
Maria, fight!
I refer the honourable lady to the reply I gave a few moments ago.
Maria, fight!
Does the Lord President know that last year no less than 1,390 operations were cancelled in the Ribble Valley Health Authority area? And does he also know that in Ayrshire the senior medical staff were balloted twice on the question of opting out of health board control and voted overwhelmingly against, but still that decision is to be imposed on the people of that area? What kind of a way does he call this to run a health service?
But I do know, in fact, that in the Ribble Valley, there has been a considerable number, up by 36%, of inpatients treated, that the waiting lists are coming down, a 65% reduction over 12 months, that there has been £36 million worth of capital since 1979, and that is a very clear indication of the priority given in that area.
Sir Robin Squire!
My honourable friend noticed that the consistent attempts of Conservative Wandsworth and Westminster to reduce their charge to the lowest level possible were described as a silly battle by the honourable member who leads for the opposition on these matters. Would he agree that many, many thousands, if not millions of people in this country would welcome other councils joining that battle? And the real silly battle is between Labour, Lambeth and Haringey, as to who will have the highest charge.
Well, I agree with my honourable friend, because when I'm in London, I happen to have to live in the London borough of Haringey, and I have watched the record of mismanagement there over many years, and it simply cannot be claimed that Haringey is getting a small amount of external support, pounds per adult. It's very high indeed. I've watched, indeed, as Secretary of State for Education, the way in which Haringey spent more money on central administration for education by a long way than any other local education authority in the country, and yet are still not able to give their accounts for their educational spending later than 1986. It's that kind of mismanagement. It's that kind of mismanagement which has produced the very high community charge in Haringey and in Lambeth and Deal.
David Trimble!
Number 4, sir.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the reply I gave some moments ago.
Trimble!
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to refer the Leader of the House to the explosion this morning in Short's design engineering works in Belfast. I'd like to ask him, would he agree that this is an attack upon jobs? It's an attack also upon fair employment. And would he also, or would the government also support not just Shorts, but other firms as well, in trying to screen out from potential employees those who would actively assist terrorists in that way?
Well, I'm sure the whole House deeply regrets the incidents that have taken place in Northern Ireland in the last few days, and would wish to extend sympathy to all those affected. I can assure the honourable gentleman that, as he knows, the government's stance on terrorism is well known, and we are determined, as always, to take every effort to stamp it out.
Mr. Robert Adley?
My right honourable friend aware that tomorrow is the 25th anniversary of the running of the final train on the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway. After which, in a fit of corporate vandalism, the track was rendered unusable at any time in the future. Is my right honourable friend aware that tomorrow I shall be presenting for its first reading the Railway Reopenings Tribunal Bill? Support for this bill includes opposition front-bench spokesman from the Labour Party, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, and the leader of the Scottish National Party, amongst many other people in all parts of the House. Would he please do his best to ensure that his cabinet colleagues recognise that ripping up temporarily redundant railway track is an unacceptable act of national vandalism?
Well, I wasn't aware of the particular anniversary, but knowing my honourable friend's very great knowledge and experience in these matters, I will take his word for it. I will certainly be willing to look at his bill, which has not yet been drawn to my attention. I will look at his bill. I'm grateful to him for drawing it to my attention.
Dennis Skinner.
Number 5.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the reply I gave a few moments ago.
Mr. Dennis Skinner.
Is the Leader of the House aware that in the first 10 years of this squalid Tory government, they handed out £26.2 billion to the wealthiest 1% of taxpayers? Is he aware that that kind of money would give a cold weather payment for every pensioner, would give a free television licences for all pensioners, would slash the National Health Service waiting lists, would get rid of Cardboard City and stop the education cuts? Instead of talking and rabbiting on about the classless society, why doesn't the government practice what it preaches and stop redistributing wealth to the rich and giving some to the poor and needy instead?
But I'm also very well aware of the much more substantial reductions in terms of expenditure in income tax on the vast majority of households in this country. I'm also well aware, as a result of the pursuit of successful economic policies, of the 42% increase in real terms on the health service, of the big increases in so many other areas. And if the honourable gentleman is actually saying that he wants to go back to the regime that we inherited in 1979, is he saying that his front bench opposite supports a tax regime of 98p in the pound at the top rate?
Michael Irvin.
Sir, not O'Shea.
Number 6, sir.
I refer my honourable friend to the reply I gave some moments ago.
Irvin.
Would my right honourable friend agree that local management of schools is proving immensely popular and that many head teachers are now included among its supporters, head teachers who previously had significant reservations about it? Would my right honourable friend further agree that the reason for its popularity is the greater flexibility and improved decision-making powers which it gives to individual schools?
As my honourable friend will know, I have always been a most enthusiastic supporter of the grant-maintained schools, and therefore I strongly agree with him. I agree that two of the virtues are two that he has drawn attention to, and I believe that's why grant-maintained schools are becoming more and more popular and more likely to occur throughout the country. And he makes a particular point about headmasters, which I think is very relevant. Could I just quote from one who was opposed to his school going grant-maintained at the first instance? And after a series of commendations, he said, and I quote, "I wouldn't miss what is happening here for anything. It is the most professionally fulfilling period of my entire experience as a head."
Mr. Dafford Wigley.
Sir.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the reply I gave a few moments ago.
Dafford Wigley.
Is the Lord President aware that there are thousands of people now having extreme difficulty in paying the poll tax for this current financial year? And within 3 or 4 weeks, they will be receiving a bill that in many areas is even greater. Does he realise that for these people, promises of some legislation in 2 years' time to overcome the poll tax is not sufficient? They need an answer now, this April. And can he give an undertaking that the government will bring in radical provision for these people to help those on low incomes, pensioners and disabled people, from the full impact of the poll tax in the next financial year?
The answer is twofold. First, that the community charge reduction scheme will benefit very large numbers of those people, on top of the other reduction and benefit schemes that we already have. And as he will know, over half of community charge payers will actually benefit from that scheme. And that's immediate from the start of April this year. And the second answer, of course, is for them to vote out those high-spending authorities at the first available opportunity who have caused so much of the increase.
Sir Emma Nicholson.
Would the Lord President like to remind Her Majesty's opposition that because of the new initiatives on the community charge and on the back of the excellent service that the Leader of the House of Lords at the other place has offered to Ribble Valley, that come this Thursday the Conservative candidate will be returned triumphantly and the Liberal and Labour candidates will return to the oblivion from which they came.
And I am sure that that will mean a very excellent new member for this House in succession to my right honourable friend in another place who performed such sterling services for Ribble Valley over the years.
Alan Williams. Number 8.
The honourable gentleman to the reply I gave a few moments ago.
Williams.
The Leader of the House may know that Sir Nigel Evans, the Conservative Party candidate in the Ribble Valley by-election, said yesterday in a press conference that he favoured the principle of everyone making a contribution towards the community charge. That is, he favoured retention of the poll tax.
Yeah.
Was he expressing his own personal view, or has someone leaked to him the results of the government's review that the government intend keeping the poll tax?
Yes.
I think I've found that very large numbers of people throughout the country, as well as in this House, think that one of the important features of the community charge has been having everyone making some contribution to the local services from which they benefit.